Hi, this is my fourth video for the members of our shared shelf, and in this one I'm looking more at the political elements of the women's story and that kind of thing. So the first question comes from Molly, and she says, are there any specific lessons or ideas in this book that you think are particularly relevant to today? Lessons that you think these women would want to be passed along? I think a key lesson that I think we can learn is how important it is to listen to and respect people, whether they're whistleblowers, whether it's a woman in a doctor's surgery telling her doctor that something is wrong. She knows her own body. I think it's really important that we do listen to people and we give them the benefit of the doubt and we believe them. And that's true whether it's those examples I've mentioned or whether it's to do with the Me Too campaign. I also think a lesson the women would want us to know is that you can make things happen. If you band together with your friends, if you fight for what you believe in, you can make a change no matter how powerless you feel. And so I think that's a really important takeaway lesson for today as well. Anne Elisabeth asks, what is the best way that we as human beings and activists can raise awareness for others? Can you give an example of a simple and impactful act that we can do to help others? I think the simplest thing we can do is to communicate and also to empathise. So I think if you know that something wrong is happening, talk about it. Share that story with other people and be empathetic when you hear of things that are happening that are wrong. Don't brush it under the carpet, don't dismiss it or trivialise it. Think how you would feel if you were in that position. Think what you would want people to do. So I think empathy and communication are the best way of making sure that injustices, don't go unaddressed. It's the best way of making sure that secrets no longer stay silent and covered up. Molly and Anne asks, do you think something like this could happen again? She says, so much new technology has entered both industrially and commercially. Do you think there are any products that we don't know the full scope of their effects? Yes. The short answer is yes. I think it's very likely, and we don't know yet what it will be. Will it be a new diet fad? Will it be mobile phones? Will it be social media? We're already starting to see some negative psychological reports of what it does to us to be on sites, that encourage us to compare ourselves and compare our lifestyles, to not feel content with what we have, to always feel we're lacking or not good enough. Already, with this new lifestyle technology that has emerged, there are studies that say there is a problem. Are we going to listen to those studies? How are we going to help the next generation who've grown up with it? So I think there's questions there, and I think, yes, I think there will be something. We don't know what it is yet, but it's likely that something will transpire in the same way that it did with radium, that it did with tobacco and so many other products. And leading on from that, floriandiotneant asks, certain institutions have been created as an answer to stop things like this happening, but humanity keeps repeating the same pattern. According to you, what safeguards can we imagine to prevent those situations from happening again and again? I don't have all the answers, but three things off the top of my head. I think we need to have oversight. People need to have governance. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. Companies and those in authority have proven time and again that they can't be trusted. People will cover things up. They will defend their colleagues. They will pursue profit over people. So I think we need oversight, whether that's commissions, whether it's committees. Someone needs to be, checking that people are doing the right thing. I think we need to listen to whistleblowers, which comes back to a point earlier in this video. Let's give people the respect that when they speak out, we believe them and we take seriously their concerns. And finally, I would say I think regulation is important. Testing products to make sure they're safe. This is why you know, we do test products, but that obviously needs to remain, that you can't release products into the market unless you have tested as fully as possible the implications. Allyarmacost asks, did you run across any stories or details you wanted to include in the book but decided not to? Yes, there was lots I found in my research I couldn't include, and a lot of the time the reason why I didn't include it was down to space. You know, I was limited on space, I had to cut the manuscript. So two things off the top of my head, I had a lot more material on what happened in the 1970s, and of course in the postscript it is merely a couple of pages that show that horrifying parallel. But I had a lot more information on that, and I also had a lot more information on something that happened to Quinta MacDonald, and in my first draft of the book it was included in detail, and that is the domestic violence that she suffered at the hands of her husband. And it's still mentioned in the book, but only really in passing. In the original manuscript, I had whole scenes where she was attacked by her husband and he tried to kill her and her children. And I'd wanted to include that. Obviously, I was interested in the women as individuals, what happened to them, their personal journeys. But because I had to make cuts, I had to look at that episode that had happened to Quinta and that experience, and I had to say, is this essential to the story of the Radium girls, to this narrative I'm telling of women poisoned by their work and fighting courageously for justice? And on that basis, I couldn't justify including it in the detail that I had. It is still in there because, of course, it is so relevant to her, but I didn't explore it in detail as I had done in my first draft. Finally, in this video, hibearface asks, did you find any stories of women of colour poisoned by radium? I didn't find any examples of women of colour poisoned by radium. I don't know if that's because white people ring-fenced it as a job, because it was seen as this lucrative, glamorous occupation that, you know, anybody wanted to do this job, and therefore people of colour were blocked from being dial painters because it was reserved for, you know, white people because it was the better job. That may have been why. I don't know why there was nothing in the records that I found about it. I just know that there weren't any women of colour in the photographs that I found, in the lists of women who were working there. But I can say that some men of colour were poisoned. I did find examples of some African men who worked in the laboratories and you know, worked for the companies, and they were poisoned by their work and they died. But there weren't any women dial painters, women of colour dial painters that I found. This concludes this video. Thank you for watching.